What the hell was that?
The last silent film I looked at was The Obsession, which did feature the Titanic, but it was more as a plot point that didn't actually need to be there. And the sinking was almost meme-worthy in execution. Now we have the other silent Titanic movie that was also made in 1912. It is a shame that we couldn't get saved from the Titanic because it's been lost to time and unsalvageable, because we could have made this a trilogy and I could have decided which one I like best. But we'll have to settle for a duology and me saying, yeah, this one's just better by default. As you can glean from the title of this video, this is the second movie ever made about the Titanic. The title translates into In Night and Ice, which sounds like a really good fantasy novel. I can tell you right away that it is better than the other Titanic silent movie. This film acted sort of as an early style of a documentary, without the historians and the science experts coming in every few minutes to break up the reenactments. This is just pure reenactment and a few explanatory details between shots. Now, with these pieces of Titanic media, there are so many pinches of salt that you have to take them with. You will notice that any piece of media made before 1985 won't be criticised for having the ship sink in one piece. Back then, though there was a lot of testimony assuring that the ship split in twain before going down, this was not confirmed until they found the wreck. And even after that, there were still many unanswered questions, such as how far she rose out of the water before she split and in what manner the stern section sank. So yeah, I'm not going to be too harsh on this movie for its inaccuracies because it was 1912, so many questions were unanswered, and they didn't have the internet yet to do all their research. The film started production in May of that year and released in August. During that production time, the American and British inquiries into the disaster were still underway. The latter published its final report on the 30th of July, so things were pretty much still up in the air at that point. The aim of In NACHT und Eis was clearly educational, and unlike the other two silent films, it doesn't feel as though it's using the Titanic as a plot point or something relevant to cash in on. And one of the benefits of this being a silent film, despite being made in Germany, is that it is very easy to distribute to different companies. All you have to do is translate the text into their respective language. The whole film is free to watch on YouTube. I'm sure it's very much public domain given it's been 110 years. Although you never know, Disney may yet pull some more strings just to keep a tight leash on Mickey Mouse. This is the first Titanic film that shows the boiler rooms on the ship, as well as the Café Parisien, as far as we know, given that its predecessor is lost. While the boiler room has become a staple in Titanic media from then on, the Café Parisien would not be shown again on screen until, 1996, where it featured on the CBS miniseries and Adventure Out of Time. That being said, there are a few inaccuracies here which could have been cleared up in 1912 that the film chose to include just to make people's actions seem more noble and trying to promote a narrative that people look bravely in the face of death that night as opposed to the chaotic scramble to survive that it eventually became. I don't ever want to see the word sacrifice used in place of people who lost their lives in an avoidable tragedy again. This is used to describe the Allison family. Trevor Allison, who was literally a baby, is aged up so he looks like he's aged between 6 and 8. And you don't see Lorraine. The Astors and the Strausses are depicted as boarding the Titanic at Southampton, and doesn't feature the ship stopping at Cherbourg or Queenstown. They lower a lifeboat in Southampton Harbour, something which also never happened. If they'd had a lifeboat drill, maybe things would have been different. They tested the lifeboats in Belfast, but that was it. Another element is that there is no look into the steerage or second-class experiences during the voyage. We see what happens from the perspectives of the crew, the first-class passengers, and some other crew members down below. It's a strange thing to see, given how many steerage stories we see in Titanic media that came afterwards. I think one thing that really put me off this film when I first saw it is the fact that every interior scene features the set constantly pivoting from side to side. Either they were actually doing that to the sets while filming, or it was done in post. But yes, in case you happen to forget... Hang on a sec. Crows and magpies outside in the garden having a spat. But yes, just in case you happen to forget that they're on a ship, surely you'll remember by getting motion sickness. It's kind of funny, as it suggests that the sea was quite rough. Well, it was well known that on the 14th of April 1912, the sea was like a lake, and one of the perks of the White Star Line's ships was they were designed to be as steady as possible in the rough waves of the Atlantic, so the interior scenes should not be buffeting about like that. In fact, a lot of ocean liners were like this. If the sea was so rough that the room is basically a seesaw, or teeter-totter as you Americans call it, they wouldn't have the passengers be moving about, they'd be kept in their cabins. They could have had a bit more respect for the audience's intelligence, is what I'm saying. The effects of the Titanic herself are a lot better than what was seen back in The Obsession, where instead of a single scale model, they use stock footage and close-ups of other ships to give you an impression of Titanic's scale. But for exterior shots where they have to show the ship in full, they also use scale models, which were allegedly filmed in a pond. And here comes the iceberg. I don't have to tell you that they've made the Titanic hit the berg on the wrong side. I was told the Titanic was supposed to graze the iceberg, not grind up on it. I'm worried I'm going to get demonetised for showing this.
Great modem of mercy! Cover the children's eyes!
There are no children here.
Then move your fat head! I can't see!
Although I will say that I like the way they differentiate the shots between interior and exterior, where the interior shots have a yellow filter, as if illuminated by artificial lighting, and the exterior shots have a blue filter to get across the idea that not only is it night time, but it's pretty damn cold. This was the best they had at the time of early filmmaking. Exterior shots of people on the lifeboats out on the water are pretty okay given their restrictions. This does feature the boilers exploding so significantly that it increases the sinking. This didn't exactly happen the way this movie think it does. But at the time it was widely believed that there was a massive explosion and then the ships just sort of slipped into the sea, when really the sound of what they thought was an explosion, because remember it was pitch black, would have been the breakup. And there was a little bit of an explosion anyway. The firemen down below did all they could to avoid large-scale explosions, and they put out most of the fires in the boilers. However, there was at least one down below which blew Second Officer Lightoller to the surface after he was pulled down briefly when the ventilation shafts were flooding. And then when the second funnel collapsed, it was reported that there was a wave of smoke and fire that rose around it when it collapsed. These fires would have been lit to keep powering the engines just so they could keep the lights on that little bit longer. Once again, I'm using this video from Titanic Honour and Glory to really get across what it was like. So after the second funnel fell, 40 seconds later, there was this colossal groan from the ship as she began to buckle from the weight, and it would have sounded as if Titanic herself was screaming in agony. It was her death throes. And then just under a minute later, the power would have gone out and the ship split in half. As far as the portrayal of Captain Smith goes, they show him respectfully as a hero who went down with his ship. His final act is swimming to the nearest lifeboat with a passenger and swimming away to stay with his ship. There is no Thomas Andrews in this. I don't think Ismay's in there either. As the wireless room floods, Jack Phillips stays behind despite Harold Bride's pleas. That's also another misconception. When the two of them realised there was no more power to send messages, they left and were separated in the crowd. Bride survived, but Phillips didn't. Overall, this film is a simple, if slowly paced attempt to understand what happened on the Titanic. It's not overly offensive, but it is pretty dated given all we know about the Titanic now. It is a good thing we didn't lose this film. For a while it seemed as though the film was lost to time, but it was rediscovered again in 1998. We get a glimpse as to how the world felt about the Titanic. How do we understand this tragedy that we never even thought possible? It's not its fault that it's this low on the list. It's just that the films that are above it do rank higher in terms of quality and story and accuracy. And they seem to show the ship more authentically, and there seems to be more gravity to the events. The next entry on our list is something I have wanted to attack for years. I did not know how bad this thing was, and even though I prepared myself for how bad it was, I still was not ready. It is one of the worst things to come out of the 1990s, apart from Pauly Shore and the Spice Girls. If you can't guess it from the teaser image, I guess you're one of the lucky ones who never heard of it. Well, you won't be lucky for long. I hope you enjoyed the video, and by the time this goes live on YouTube, the next one is going to be available on Patreon, so if you are a Patreon, you can watch it right now. By becoming a patron, you do get certain perks like getting scripts and videos ahead of time, and you'll also get your name in the credits, just like these lovely people that you see on the screen before you right now. And of course the VIP patrons, or King and Queen patrons, they not only get all these benefits, but they also get a shout out in the credits at the end of practically every video I make, unless I'm making just like a simple gag video or something that won't be charged to the patrons eventually. So this is my shout out to Alison Cuff, Larissa, Lady Eternal and Leslie Williams. Thank you girls so much. And yeah, the next one. I'm gonna need a drink for the next one. Hate it so much.